Hey, what's up guys? Today we are in TTS. I'm going to be talking about 3 tips that'll help your Warhammer game and potentially improve your win rate, etc. So our first tip is going to be charge phase stuff. So number 1 is how we can use pilot and consolidate to dodge heroics. In this scenario right here, the Demon Prince is set up 6 inches away. How can we reduce movement by utilizing that same thing I just talked about? And what is move blocking yourself and ending closer to the enemy model? So what I mean by move blocking yourself is when you declare a charge and when you successfully make it, everyone that can base must base. However, you can still move your models in any order that you like. So let's just take an 8 right here on this charge. So what we're going to be able to do is this guy is going to go 5, 6, 7, 8. This guy is going to go here. Now no one can fit there. Then we're going to go here. 5. Boom. No one can fit between there. No one can fit between there. No one can fit between there. All right, cool. So when you've reached this point, generally what I like to do is I ask my opponent, hey, would you agree that no more models in my unit can base this? And they would say, oh yeah, or maybe you could fit there, etc., etc. So let's just say that they agree. Now, this Lord Exultant, who we care about, who we want to have end up fighting this 8-pound unit, can end his charge move 5.5 inches away from the Rhino, because he'll be ending 0.1 closer. Now, in real life, you want to agree on these measurements with your opponent before you start moving stuff, but remember, I rolled an 8, so I get to go basically right here, outside of 1 inch of the 8-pound. Closer to the Rhino that I could not base, and closer to the 8-pound, because when we pile in, you have to go to the closest model. So next, these guys will just shuffle in accordingly, etc. You can kind of put them wherever you need them. For me, I like to go that way. I mean, we don't care that much about the Rhino. We want to do this. And also, because we ended 6.1 away from this Demon Prince, he cannot heroic. Now, the 8-pound can heroic if they'd like, but that's fine, because that's what we're trying to kill them anyways. So now the next step of this process is we activate our unit to fight. So when you activate to fight, you get to pile in 3. And the pile in says you have to end in base if you can, and you must end closer to the closest possible unit. So the way we set up this charge, we are 1.9 away from the Rhino and 1 inch away from the 8-pound, which is going to allow him to go right there. And now he gets to swing on the 8-pound after his pile is done. This guy can go here. He ended closer to this, could not base, and now we get to swing through here with him. This guy, unfortunately, is going to have to go this way. Okay, so now we're going to have 2 guys swinging into the 8-pound and then the rest into the vehicle. So you might be asking, okay, why are we going through all these hoops just to do this when I could have just declared a 4-inch multi-charge there and made both? Well, there's a few different reasons. Number 1, the heroic that I talked about. We could kill this whole 8-pound unit, but then we lose like 7 or the whole unit to this cracked Demon Prince and World Eaters, right? Also, too, why we don't need to roll a 5 now. We need to roll a 2 to make it into this. Now, granted, we rolled an 8 here, but that's very reasonable on 2 dice, 8 or a 7. Realistically, you probably could have did this play on like a 6, but you can talk through all that stuff with your opponent before you make all these rolls. And lastly, it allows us to get some free movement and set up to do things without taking any damage on our turn. Because that's, again, I've mentioned a few times, that is rule 101. Being good is don't die on your own turn. Very bad. So now this Exultant gets to swing after his pile-in. He'll likely kill 2, maybe 3 of these 8-pound. And then these guys generally will murder the transport with between lethals and all that fun stuff. So that's just a cool example of how you can utilize the rules and pile and consolidate to mitigate damage and still hit stuff on your opponent's turn. Alrighty? Or hit stuff on your turn without taking damage back. So let's move into the next tip, which is going to be overcommitting and when to push and when to not push, basically. Alright, so here I've got a little scenario set up on the bottom half of the board where our opponent has put some jackals on our expansion, and we have to take care of them without murdering a bunch of our own stuff, right? So first thing we want to do when our opponent does something like this, we want to look at what we have access to fighting it with. So on our side of the table, we have Demonettes, who move 9, and get +1 to charge. So if our demonettes want to charge this, it's going to be a 4-inch charge, right? Our fiends move 12 through the wall, so that will be a 2-inch charge. And then we have a noise bring unit inside of this, which we could do a few different things with. We could get them out, shoot this unit because they're on this. We could drive the rhino up, shoot them anyways. Or we could simply kind of have the rhino sort of ignore them. Now, we know that our World Eater opponent has an ability to where if I kill this in any phase, it can sticky the objective. So what that tells me is we don't necessarily want to blow this unit off the objective, because then we won't have anything on it and it'll be sticky. So then they'll score it anyways and they'll accomplish what they wanted. Option 2 is I can murder it with, Fiends of Slanesh, which we don't really want to do because that is a more valuable unit than the Demonettes. So my play here is how can we A, kill this unit, B, have these demonettes in a relatively safe spot, and C, not allow our opponent to accomplish what they want with their stratagem. So my play that I like to do is I'll move these demonettes up 9. That's how far they move, right? We know we have a CP reroll if we really need it on this 4-inch, and we don't need to commit our fiends, so we can develop our fiends a little bit behind this building if we want it. And then the rhino, actually, we would advance. Let's just call it a 14. Now the rhino here has got some. It's developing to where if this Forge Fiend wants to come out and interact with these demonettes, we've got some counterplay with our rhino, and we get to shoot it back. And additionally, these fiends get to come out and mess with it as well. So we hit this. Now, also another small thing, we get sustained if we're within 6 of the rhino with the demonettes, but that's like sort of irrelevant. Now, what this does and why we do a play like this is because we are countering our opponent's play with a play of our own that is not a huge point investment, and it's not a CP investment at all unless we fail our little. Actually, it ends up being a 3-inch charge, but if we fail a 3-inch charge, we're very sad. Now, other options you have, you could shoot it a little bit with the rhino to make sure that the demonettes kill it guaranteed. However, we don't really care if this unit lives. We just need to make sure our opponent doesn't score this primary here because they can't fall back and do anything. So what we do, he's an inch off the wall here, so we have to basically go this way. Let's just call it a 7 on the dice, and then we get to go 8 inches. So this demonette unit gets to go boom, 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 boom. Now we're not basing here, so we can loop around, give us some more guys to fight with. All right, so you guys know how this goes. I've played this unit enough to know that it pretty much will destroy this Jekyll unit like every single time. So what happens is now we do our fun little consolidate pile-in to make sure we have the maximum possible attacks, and then we kill the unit. And then now, unfortunately, we can't end up getting safe, but we can go closer this way. Okay. So now, if my opponent wants to expose his Forge Fiend to shoot the demonettes off this point, we're just going to have to let him do that. And frankly, probably should have found a way to put this right here. But anyways, this is not the point. Basically, what we did was we got rid of our opponent without committing a huge resource. And now if our opponent wants to crack us back, he either has to commit this Forge Fiend or something else, which we have now set up 2 units from our army to be able to deal with it from a safe position. Okay, so that's kind of a board control type scenario because we're in a striking distance with multiple units. We're sitting on primary, so our opponent has to find a way to deal with this demonette unit. And if they can't, we simply are just going to score it. So next, we're going to talk about move blocking and when it is actually useful. All right, so move blocking is very delicate and very precise. So I'm going to kind of show some things that you can do with Seeker specifically. However, anything with a big base like Bikes or anything fast moving that has a large unit size is pretty capable of doing this. So we won the roll off as Emperor Children here. So these guys get to Scout 9. Now, World Eater does have a 6-inch pile-in consolidate, which can mess things up a little bit, but you can account for that sort of thing, and I can show you sort of how to do that really quick. Let's go Scout 9. Okay, And then our opponent gets to scout these on here, but that's really not relevant because we're set up accordingly. Okay, cool. So now these guys move 14. So what we can do is when we move block our opponent, it's going to allow us to stage a bit more aggressively. And in an army like World Leaders, or not World Leaders, Emperor's Children, staging aggressively is very beneficial to you. Also, it's going to open up the board for a rapid ingress for our 6-man Fiend unit. So these things move 14 plus an advance. Again, advance is sort of irrelevant because like a 14 gets us all the way right here, right? So we go 14, boom. Roll an advance, just take a 3 on it. So we get to go 17 inches, right? So now we get to go like this. Now 2 inches apart, remember? It's not working. Same as the last one. I probably should have switched units. But we're going to do, we 1 inch the wall on the opposite side so they can't charge us on this side. This goes right here. Goes right here. Now, it's very important that we find a way to pin this Demon Prince down here. So, because the Demon Prince is very good. So we get to go with these guys once again. Same thing. 1 inch away. Boom. 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 Now we will trigger a disembark on the Rhino if we want, but that doesn't really matter. Okay, cool. So just take a look at this. Let's be the World Leader player for a second. Okay. So we are the World Leader player. We take Pile and Consolidate 6. Even if we charge here, kill it, we actually don't get to make it to the point. Now you could stack some things. You could definitely get the Demon Prince onto this middle point. However, we're going to have this basically stage right here. These things have almost no fear of getting shot by the Forge Fiend down here. The bottom side is really the only side of the board that our opponent gets to play, and that's our expansion objective. So we're not super fearful of that. The Berserkers can't come out in a straight line. The 8-bound can't come out in a straight line. Really, the only way our opponent has to interact with stuff outside of their area here is a Forge Fiend, and that Forge Fiend also likely isn't going to be in rapid fire range either. So, you could even just dump this right here with your Infractors in it. Realistically, you've got 2 of them, then you get to drive the other one like here, right? And then you have your other units like going down to your expansion objective. So very, very cool. Our opponent is put in a really bad spot, and what we're being very careful of is that we're not just giving them a free movement. Like, if this is not move blocking, guys. Okay? When we do stuff like this doesn't feel like it's move blocking. I see this a lot. People will go like this and they're like, oh, well, I'm move blocking my opponent. Not really, because they just get to charge you, kill you, and stand on their expansion like they wanted to anyway. When we move block, we want to just end their movement phase. We want them to just not be able to move anything, okay? And set up in a spot to where they have to expose a bunch of their things to kill this, which get cracked back hard by our army. Because let's talk about this, right? They come out, they kill all this, and now their stuff is in just really weird spots that are exposed from a bunch of different angles, which is going to get set up to get charged by just so many different things. In this scenario, likely you'd have this on the table, right? But when our opponent now is out of sorts, their things are out of position, and they're behind a whole turn, because likely you'll get a max on primary for at least the 1 turn, which also mitigates going first a little bit from a point perspective. So that's something I just wanted to showcase there for going first move blocking, and like how you would want to pin them in their deployment zone. Now I do have another quick one as well for like my mid-late game play for move blocking, so let me load that up really quick. All right, so let's talk about move blocking in other more practical scenarios. So let's say we're in a late game scenario right now. We're down to like 2 rhinos that are empty. Basically, I've got 1 infractor unit. Our opponent's got 2 8-bound and some other assorted stuff on the table, right? How can we, as a turn player, effectively neutralize both of these 8-bound with these 3 units? So the answer to that is move blocking, right? So what we'll do is we know these guys can't go through rhinos, and we know that they can't fly, right? So this rhino will get to go 12. We'll take a 2 on the advance, 14. And then this rhino gets to just drive to be right here, which then frees up our infractor unit to go play the game on the middle without anything to worry about, because this 8-bound unit now has to go 5 around the building. Again, really simple example, but now we're completely safe from this 8-bound unit. And what does that mean? Okay, next turn, let's say our opponent has no answer to these rhinos, right? Guess what we get to do next turn? boom, right? He gets to block him again. And our infractor unit is now just running around the table doing whatever it wants, because this 8-bound unit can never catch them because we're continuously move blocking with the rhinos our opponent doesn't have access to. So if you guys keep your dedicated transports alive, they're really cool for this, by the way, at the end. It's also worked with fiends and seekers, any other bike units, fly, fire and fade type units, anything that can kind of pin this unit inside of this wall and punish our opponent for staging is very, very valuable. So that's just a nice little quick example of like a late game move block to kind of keep something alive so you can keep playing the game. Maybe if you're behind or trying to score bottom turn, a lot of different ways you can apply this. But that's really it, guys. The 3 little fun tips. If I mess anything up, let me know, but this is a format I wanted to try. It's kind of fun to make it, so keep subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next one.